Jan Dubiel says children are too busy to have fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me. I don't expect people to agree with me. There's a very strong kind of movement around the word play, but they won't engage in any kind of discussion about whether that's the right word or not. It's almost as though we can't have that discussion, and that worries me too.
Oh my God, it's Jan Dubiel.
Jan Dubiel in my setting? Goodness
You go
me.
for the Cookie Monster. I'm very worried about the safeguarding concerns in your nursery with the Cookie Monster. Hello!
Hello!
And welcome to...
I can't believe that worked.
That worked. You didn't think that was going to work, did it?
Honestly, I didn't. No offence, fellas. I didn't think that was going to go down properly at all.
This is our very, very first live edition of the Tiny Chair podcast. As you just heard, we have a wonderful live studio audience with us. I don't know why I said that. Studio audience.
It's a studio.
Feels like it's... Yeah,
It could be a
It could be a
studio,
studio.
it's fine.
With there's microphones and a camera. It's perfect. And we are joined today by the very, very wonderful Jan Dubiel. Jan Dubiel in the house. I think that's a big round of applause.
Lovely, thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So normally, we have our guest online somewhere. So it's the first time doing it in person, which I'm very excited about. But it doesn't mean you don't get the wonderful, really lengthy intro that I normally do.
Oh.
So for those who don't know, Jan is an early years expert, consultant, trainer and writer. He is the program director for Hey! At Hempsall's. And in 2018, the Times Educational Supplement named Jan one of the 10 most influential people in British education. That's pretty nice, isn't it, Julia? He has decades of experience in the sector as a nursery, reception year 1 teacher in schools across the UK and leading teams as an early years coordinator. Former head of national and international development at Early Excellence, and now works as an independent speaker. He did a wonderful talk here today, which was nice. Yep. A consultant trainer and all the usual stuff. I first came across Jan in 2018 because he retweeted a piece I wrote saying a good example of what not to read. So I emailed him.
Did he really?
He did, yeah. So I emailed him and asked him for more feedback, which I thought was quite a cool move. And to his credit, he did apologise for being so curt, blunt, sarcastic and unhelpful, which I thought was also a nice quick response. And it was the start of a beautiful friendship. But he was right.
I was really hoping you weren't going to bring that up.
Since then, Jan's written for us. He's been interviewed by us. He's sat on our inaugural Children's Champion panel and been a huge supporter of what we do, which is good news. So, Jan, welcome to the Tiny Chair.
Thank you very much. And apologies again for being, what was it?
Curt, blunt, sarcastic and unhelpful.
Yeah. Good, that's the whole lot.
Do you think that's quite a good description of you in 2018?
Possibly so, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Have you got any feedback from Matt today?
Yeah, so far?
So far, I think you're fantastic.
Thanks.
Example of what not to listen to,
Maybe by the end.
I think you've written something about assessment, hadn't you?
It was about observations, and it was a bit rubbish, to be fair.
Yeah, but you didn't deserve that.
Julia, should we get kicking off?
Yes, Jan, do you know what an ick is?
Is it something you don't like?
Yeah, pretty much something you don't like. So not something harmful or dangerous, but something you just, if you walk into a setting, you think, ah. So is there an early years ick that you can share with us?
That's a really good question.
Thank you very much. Praise for me.
I don't get that.
What not to read for you?
That's a really good question. I think I have a lot. I probably have a lot. Well, as you can imagine from what Matt said, I probably have a lot of them. I do my best not to share them, actually.
On Twitter?
Well, no, I don't really go on Twitter anymore.
Well,
probably because since then. But I try and hold that in, actually, because for me, it's about the quality of practice. And it's about the quality of what the children are doing, what the adults are doing. And actually that can happen in any kinds of environments. So for instance, to be fair, I'm not very keen on lots of plastic resources, for example. That's a personal thing. And actually I've seen children using plastic resources working at a really high level of engagement, involvement and doing fantastic things. I'm very conscious that when you're in a position like this, when you're going to a setting, people will be going, well, whatever I say is, and I don't like that. But
you don't just want to be like, not that.
No, exactly. So I always try and keep that a little bit hidden. And often I see things I don't particularly like, but my question is, well, is it working for the children? That's my first point. And if it is, then that's not for me. It's not for me to say that because we have, I often say in the EYFS, we talk about the individual child, the unique learner. We also have unique practitioners. We are all different. We come from different traditions. We have different roots into it. And actually, we just need to make it work. And whatever we do by, as Malcolm X might say, by whatever means necessary, we make that work for those children. And I think that can be kind of, multi-dimensional.
Okay.
That's a fabulous answer, wasn't
It's
it?
a good answer.
I was hoping
did
you were
want-
going to say something sassy, but
Yeah,
this
I
is
did
very
want something a bit
profound.
shallow, if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
that was
But
very
we'll take
profound.
Well,
the
do you want
chance.
to list things I don't like?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm not going to.
We'll get you by the end. Right, let's really move on. Do we do the earliest pick then?
Oh, actually, do you know what? I will say one because this is
Excellent.
important. And it's a really obvious one. It's behaviour charts.
Oh,
okay.
So when I say behaviour charts, I think, and particularly when they're displayed and you can see children on the rainy cloud or the dungeon or whatever it is they've put on.
the dungeon.
I've seen the dungeon,
you
yeah.
have not seen a dungeon, really? That's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
God, dear.
I'm going to bring this to work, I think.
Yeah,
Put you in the dungeon
Matt's
when you've
my
done,
manager,
yeah.
and yeah,
Right.
if I start getting misbehaving and messing around, I'm going to the
I'll
dungeon.
put you in the dungeon. Love it.
Oh, dear.
Right then, so the opposite side, we've got a new idea called the early years pick, which is if you get to airlift one thing into every single early years setting in the country. It could be a person, it could be a resource, it could be even a concept. What is the one thing you would love to just airlift into every single early years setting in the country?
Practitioners' confidence in their own judgment and what they're doing.
Hell yeah.
Oh.
Love it. Completely.
Without-
Sorry, did
without-
you want everyone to clap?
No,
Did we
it's
all
just me.
join in?
Yeah, I think we should
Without-
all join in. Yeah.
Hey!
I kind of was hoping that would happen and then it didn't. So
Yeah, I think without a doubt, the biggest transformative thing to the sector would be, I mean, it goes along with the status of early years, which is an external thing. But I think early years educators realising the impact and the potency and the complexity and the intellect that they bring to what they do, and to be confident about that and to be protective of it.
I love that idea. Like, what could happen if all of the practitioners in the UK just believed in themselves a bit more? How much better would things be?
Yeah,
That's a great
absolutely,
point.
absolutely.
That's very profound to me, because when I was an educator, I had that sort of imposter syndrome feeling myself. And, you know, when you get some new legislation from the DFE, or there's a new document released by Ofsted, or your manager or the head office people come in and they say, right, now we're going to do it like this. And you think, I don't really think that is good. That's not a good idea. It's not going to work. But you kind of have to just go with it. And you think, well, what do I know? You know, I'm only, an educator. And I you're right. I wish there was more of that. Actually, I know these children. I know what they need. And it's not, this daft idea that you lot have come up with.
No, and I think
Not you lot, to be clear.
Sorry, yeah.
You're fine.
I think I see, because I would say that that's interesting. We might get on to this. The legal requirements of what we're required to do are actually quite open and quite interpretable,
Yeah.
which is why that confidence is so important, because I think you can interpret that in different ways.
Right.
Kathy Gooch, a writer, wrote about the concept of creative compliance, that you comply with things, but you do it in the way that makes sense to you. And I would say actually the current EYFS is the most autonomous, most professionally supportive one we've had. But there is a residue of people who still don't acknowledge that. And I think those are the people who need the confidence, because, and this won't go down well, but I'll say it.
Oh.
Nice.
When I was talking this morning about external pressures that compromise what's right for children, I think everyone was thinking I was talking about DFE and Ofsted and so on. Actually, I wasn't. I'm more talking about people like me, actually, people who have an idea, or who have a resource, who have an initiative. And they say, if you do this will happen. And because we lack confidence, people gravitate towards that, and that's not always the best thing to do. So that filter of professional confidence isn't just about being creatively compliant around Ofsted and DFE. It's actually being creatively compliant about the things we are bombarded with as a sector.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
I think it is interesting. I find even often in my work, it's easy sometimes when you read a book or maybe you listen to a podcast, you think, and you sort of want to take that and just go with it. And I think there is what it's about is taking the information in and then making it your own a little bit more, right? It's so easy to become like, I just need to take this framework and apply it to my reality, and suddenly everything will work. And that's a lack of confidence often.
Absolutely. And I think all the best educators, they are eclectic in terms of their drivers and their inspirations. And you draw from lots of different things, and you shape that around your own values, your own experience, your own beliefs, your own knowledge, conversations you've had, research you've done, articles you've read, and they are all individual. And having seen outstanding early years educators, It's the impact of what they do, not what they do, which defines them. So they all do it very, very differently.
Love that.
Lovely, yeah.
Beautiful.
Should we
Right, we're
move
doing
to-
really well. We talked
Go
about
on.
how it was going to be difficult, and we are 2 questions in.
Oh, crumbs, all right.
We're
Go
doing
on.
great. On to the quick fire round, just to kick us off before we go into the meat of the podcast. Yeah, and what is the funniest thing a child has ever said to you?
I'm trying to think of something that's appropriate.
Well,
This is normally the issue.
you
We've
did
talked.
it
We've
is
talked about.
editable, right?
Yeah, that's true. We've talked about having like a late night tiny bar stools for the stuff that doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all the funny things are really inappropriate, and that's why they're funny. So yeah, I can't think of one specifically, but I would say that when I was an educator, particularly, we laughed a lot. We laughed a lot at all sorts of things. I've just been trying to think of something I can share. I might come back to you.
You can come back to it when it
Come
comes
back
back to you later
Yeah.
on. Aside from early childhood, sorry, I'm going again, Julia. Apologies. Aside from early childhood, what's your like top subject? What would you win in a quiz? Again, like if you had to go in a quiz against this room full of people, and you had to win for that bottle of champagne downstairs,
Right.
what would you go for?
Well, like as a conventional.
Yeah, like what's a
Yeah.
thing you have like a weirdly deep.
Juno
deep
Sullivan's was
knowledge,
London buses, wasn't it?
for example.
So yeah, Juno Sullivan says she knows
I think
all the bus
I'd do quite well on ornithology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Is that birds?
Yes,
Birds.
it is. As a child, that was my thing. Growing up, it was equivalent of my dinosaurs. Yeah, I was an expert on those. I think I'd probably do quite well.
What's your
on
favourite
that.
bird?
Oh, I was going to ask that.
What's
Lovely.
my
Sorry,
favourite
Julia.
bird? Well, also within that, I had a real obsession when I was about 8 or 9 with penguins.
Oh, penguins
So
are good.
my knowledge of penguins, certainly then I'd have to brush it up. I had a really, really good knowledge of penguins. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
We'll save that for the penguin segment.
That's
Oh,
good.
good,
I'm going to
good.
Google some good penguin questions for later. Do penguins have shoulder blades?
That's a question from the
Totally.
audience.
Yeah, yeah.
Do
I think
they?
Do they?
Yeah. Well, it's because they don't use their wings for flight. They use it to propel under the ground. So their wing, although they have wings, they're not the same. I can't listen to
This
it.
is absolutely.
They're not the same as like a flying bird's wings. And also one of the astonishing things about them is their biggest point of vulnerability is not getting in, is getting out of the water. When they're in the water, they can outswim most things, and because they're kind of manoeuvrable. And obviously, when they're on land, they're kind of safe. They can jump in the water if they get attacked. But it's the point of getting out of the water into the onto the rock.
Onto the rocks.
So they have evolved this jump. When you watch it,
So that's why they jump.
Absolutely incredible. It's like, and that's because that's their biggest window of vulnerability. So they've evolved to survive. They learn how to jump and propel themselves out of the water. And,
That's so good.
Magic.
It's good, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Come for the early years pedagogy, stay for the penguin facts.
Yeah.
That's the Tiny Shed podcast in all in one go. Right, Julia, now you can have a go. Sorry. I'm gonna
No, I
stop
just want to
stealing
hear
your
more about
thunder.
penguins. Shall we? Oh, all right. We'll go back to early childhood. Is there something that you had a strong feeling about, or you believed in the past, pedagogically or in terms of practice, that you've changed your mind about now?
You've deliberately asked me that question, haven't you? Because I'm going to say play.
It's on my card, yeah.
I'm going to say the word play. Yeah, I have a very maverick and heretical view on the word play, not the concept, but the word play. So interestingly, about 15 or so years ago, maybe a bit less, I kind of started coming to the conclusion that play wasn't the right word to describe what children do. The children's learning development is really complex, it's very sophisticated, and I think the word play undersells that and actually, ironically, devalues it. Partly because the word play in general language means something frivolous or something you do just for leisure. I don't think young children, as I said this morning, I don't think young children ever do anything that's frivolous. Everything they do is really, really serious and really important. So it has that kind of baggage with it. And I think when we talk about play to people, particularly outside the early years community, their subconscious trigger is that something not worthwhile, which it isn't. So yeah, I have stopped using the word play and written voluminously about this. Also discovered not that long ago, a while ago, that Maria Montessori agrees with me. She talked about play being children's work, but she said it's serious, it's work. So they're often in Montessori settings, they talk about work, not play. And that has put me in hot water with people, as you can imagine, because people are very emotionally welded to the word play. Interesting enough, though, and I'll ask you this: define it for me. What is play?
Oh no.
Can I ask the questions?
You can.
Shall we swap? Do you want the cards as well?
You do have to sit on the tiny chair then. Did you
Oh,
want to ask
yeah.
the
Okay,
question?
well we'll leave. Well, okay, but that's
It's a good question. What do you think? You go.
What do I think play is? I think, yeah, you're right. Play is something that is pleasurable. It's an activity that you enjoy doing. I'm not sure I could define it any more specifically than that, because I guess it depends who you are. My play might not be your play. But yeah, it's something it's an activity that brings joy, right?
Absolutely right. So here's the issue, and here's the challenge, because we use the word play constantly. It's a touchstone of all practice, but we don't have a definition. And we don't have a definition partly because people see it very differently. For some people, anything where an adult is involved can't be play. For other people, if you're working with a child, you're a play partner. So we have this, but we're using the word without a definition. And that actually does worry me, because we do use words like play, we use the word joy, we use the word child-centred, but we don't really have a definition of what they mean. So we're using the central tenets of our philosophy without a definition or without an understanding or a consensus about what that means. So it's not about the concept, it's not about the things that you've said, and it's not about children being autonomous and following their interests and getting excitement and thrills from what they're doing. It's simply the 4-letter word play.
Did you hear my excited intake of breath to ask a question?
When Julia does an excited intake of breath, I have to let her go.
Because so if we don't call it play, what do we say then? How are we describing this amazing process that we witness every day in our settings of children working out and enjoying things and discovering? Like, what do we call it?
Part of the issue is it isn't just one thing, and it's the complexity of how children learn, how children develop, and how children demonstrate that learning. So it's not a question, I think, of perhaps replacing it with one word. It's recognising how, again, multidimensional that is. I mean, I have been asked this before, and I think what I might come up with is the phrase autonomous intellectual pursuit. But it's not, that's not going to... It's not going to roll off. No, it's not going to roll off the tongue.
AIP?
Particularly.
Could acronym it, couldn't you? APE?
But then again, I go back to thinking actually it's too complex for that. The other thing, and I'm going to be controversial.
Oh, go bananas!
Why
go
not?
on.
Yeah. There is a big glass window over there, just in case you get really controversial. One of these people might get angry.
When children do that, when they take play, and particularly when they do it autonomously and independently, I don't think that's the same as learning. I think learning, I told you. Learning is about, if you take a classical definition of learning is about acquiring information. When they play, if you want to use that word, they are demonstrating and internalising and connecting that knowledge with things that matter to them. So actually, I think there's a different word. Rather than learning through play, it's, if you want to use that word, it's about thinking, and it's about reconstructing, and it's about internalising those things. So it's unusual, and I'm sure people disagree with much of what I've said, but it's unusual, I think, for children to learn new things in a classical sense when they're doing that. What they're doing is connecting that together and, doing what I described Roger Salier's work on deep level learning, or what Lillian Katz describes as intellectual pursuit.
Interesting.
It's interesting.
That is a bit controversial. I'm looking at the audience. What do we think?
But you also, this is really important. You don't have to agree with me. I don't expect people to agree with me. It's a point of view. And I think all the best dialogues are about when people have different points of view and they disagree and say, well, I want to use word play because of these reasons, my definition of play. And that's fine. I think one of the problems we have in the narrative around early years at the moment is it's very, very narrow, and people don't have the kinds of discourse they should have. For instance, around the word play, there is a very strong kind of movement around the word play, which is quite evident, but they won't engage in any kind of discussion about whether that's the right word or not. It's almost as though we can't have that discussion, and that worries me too.
I think it's difficult when something is so sacred, and that's maybe not always the best thing. I'm interested in this new tick you've developed for saying play, if you want to call it that, which I quite like. You could start using like the artist formerly known as play or something like that. But
The activity formerly known as play, yeah.
I suppose my thinking is a little bit that you sort of have on the one side, I do actually see this point that you're making, which is that we really want more respect. And I do think if you're to take a random person off the street and you're to ask them for a definition of play, they might say something like, when you're doing something but it doesn't necessarily like have a purpose. You know, they might say it's like, oh, you're just having fun.
Yeah.
And I guess I do understand your argument, which is essentially to say, therefore, that using that word may well mean that people are not taking us as seriously as they ought to be. And
one of my points is, I suppose, when I am discussing this with people, I would say, what if, just imagine, what if we change the word play, and just change the word play would mean we got the respect and recognition we know we should have. Wouldn't it be worth trading in that one word for that kind of status? And some people will say no, because like I said, they are emotionally attached to the word. It's almost like an article of faith.
I think the correct answer to that question is yes, but will it actually do that?
Well, no, I suppose if we knew it would, we
probably would.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that. How do you stop an entire population of people using a word? We should give it a go.
But I think
that's what you're trying. I like it.
There's been so much to reclaim the word play. We have as a sector spent so long saying, learning through play is so important, talking about continuous provision and play in the sense of child-led play, traditional play, I guess. Then, I can understand almost that it feels like a bit of a betrayal of play if we're saying, we can't call it that anymore, even though we've spent so long trying to say.
I think that was part of my evolution or my thinking, because I got to a point where, I used the word play, and I was realising it wasn't getting across what I wanted it to, both kind of on a micro level, but also particularly at a strategic level. And that's the point where I thought, if we call that something different, would it change the perception of what we do?
And I suppose the flip side is exactly that. It's almost like, do we accept the realism of that is challenging? And I think probably people who disagree with you would say the answer is that we need to make a bigger deal out of it, and we need to win the other side of the argument. I suppose perhaps that's probably the thing that could be said against the idea, is actually we're just on our way to winning the other side of the argument. I do see even things like play in the workplace being talked about more and more,
gamification and stuff,
and all this.
But you see, I would argue that's something very different, because that is about having fun. You see, I think I'm really unpacking them all today. I'm not sure. I think fun is an adult word. I think as adults we have fun because our lives are balanced like that if we're lucky. I don't think children are particularly interested in having fun in that adult sense. Because they're too busy making sense of the world. You think of the rapidity of change that's going on in their brains, and how they're desperately trying to find out what they're doing and find out about the world and make sense of it all. I think children are too busy to have fun. They're too busy to kind of do what we might describe as leisure things.
It's so good that this is a long-form podcast, because I could really skewer you here. Jan Dubiel says children are too busy to have fun.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's two different things, because when we think about something pleasurable or fun in that context, it's usually because it's intellectually stimulating. Like, otherwise it's boring and it's not fun. So therefore, surely there's an element of challenge or learning in fun.
A lot of this is semantic. I suppose it's about the word fun. And I think and that could be me, when I conceptualize the word fun, I think of, from an adult perspective, it's about doing fun stuff. It's about enjoying yourself. So like that quote I had from Lillian Katz, fun is the purpose of entertainment, not education. But as she says, which I agree, and I was very much like that as a teacher, it doesn't mean children aren't enjoying it or excited by it. It doesn't mean that you don't teach in a playful way, which I did. So it's not dismantling the concept. Maybe it's dismantling the way it's presented. We do have an image crisis in early years. The way we are perceived and the way we are, and therefore treated by people who don't understand what we do, is quite acute. And I think that's at the heart of a lot of things. We talked about confidence earlier. So I think this is about how we present the idea of early child education and what we do. It's not about changing what we do on a day-to-day basis, where we interact with children, or how we do all the things that we've talked about. I suppose it's how we talk about it and how we explain it to people. Because typically, people who take decisions about early years have not been early years educators, so they don't get
useful,
it.
isn't it?
They don't get it. So we have to
yep.
come part way to kind of speak us the same language. We have a very, very separate language in early years. We use words like play, for instance. People don't use play anywhere else in the education system. We have a particular EYFS curriculum framework, which is presented in a particular way. So, for example, we don't have science or history or geography. We have, understanding the world. As happens, I disagree with that, but that's maybe for later. So we do kind of section ourselves off in some way, and I don't think that's helpful. We need to make sure people understand that continuum, and that when children are, filling up a bucket full of sand, they're exploring their, mathematical concepts in a practical way. But there's a direct line between that and them doing A-level, applied maths or pure maths or so on.
I feel like we could speak about this all day, but I know we also have some stuff.
I was hoping to speak a bit more.
Were you hoping to speak a bit more about it?
Go on.
We've
We'll
got 10 minutes left, and we've got some. I know.
No.
I knew you'd give me that face. That's why I'm in charge of the time, and you're not.
Go on then.
We've got some other stuff we need to talk about, which I think is really interesting, because this semantic discussion, I know, is something that is something that's is important to you, because I think you're right. The way in which we're perceived is so important. Words matter, but I also know you've been doing a lot of work that moves beyond semantics, and I want to talk about this kind of moving the box work that you've been doing, which is not semantics, but is a real thing that's been really moving the box in that sense. But before we get there, we've got a new game.
Fantastic.
And we're pretty excited about this one.
Well, I hope it's not
blunt and sarcastic, Jan?
I hope it's not fun.
It is. It's really... Well, you cannot have fun while you're doing it, but I certainly am going to have fun. It's called Imaginary Friend. And the idea is you're going to open an earlier setting in this imaginary world. And you... I really messed that up, didn't I? And you need to choose your business partner to be the manager of the setting, your imaginary friend. And we're going to present you with two options, and then you have to pick one. And then the one you pick will go up against the next option until we're finished. Okay. Are you with me?
Conceptually confusing?
No.
Got it. Right.
Okay. So to start off, we're going with the Gruffalo or Pikachu.
I'd go with the Gruffalo.
Okay.
Interesting.
Nice.
Controversial.
So the Gruffalo or the Cocoa Melon Baby. I don't know what that is.
Do you know what the Cocoa Melon Baby is?
No.
You don't
I
like
don't
any
know.
Jan
earlier.
doesn't either, so Jan's picking the Gruffalo, I guess. So then the Gruffalo or the Little Prince.
I'll stick with the Gruffalo.
Okay.
Popular choice.
The Gruffalo or Bluey.
I would go with Bluey. Yeah, that's
we love Bluey.
God, the Gruffalo is doing so well, but Bluey feels like the right choice. So Bluey or the Little Mermaid.
I'd stick with Bluey.
Really?
Bluey.
I was thinking the Hans Christian Andersen connection.
Did you guys know that Jan is distantly related to Hans Christian Andersen?
It's true. Through my granddad, yeah.
But you still pick Bluey. So Bluey or one of the Paw Patrol.
Any of the Paw Patrol. They have access to their machinery as well, if that helps sway.
They're pretty good, the Paw Patrol.
No, I think I like Bluey.
Okay,
Bluey's
sticking. I mean, this is Bluey or the Cookie Monster.
He's a loose cannon.
I might go back to the Cookie Monster for that.
Goodness
Go for the
me.
Cookie Monster. I'm very worried about the safeguarding concerns in your nursery with the
Not
Cookie
just
Monster.
that, the staff room's going to be a mess.
So the Cookie Monster or two of the Teletubbies. You can pick which ones.
Yeah, I'm going to go. Sorry, Cookie Monster. There's a limited reign there. I'm going to go with two of the Teletubbies.
That's better for ratios, isn't it?
That is better
Two
for ratios.
Teletubbies.
Yeah, they can go supernumerary. And finally, those two Teletubbies of your choice are Elsa from Frozen.
She's tuneful.
I'm going to stick with the Teletubbies. She'd just go on and on about letting it go, wouldn't she?
You'd be like, look, I really think we shouldn't use play, and she'd be like, let it go.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot I need to let go, and the last thing I need is someone
also,
constantly
it's
telling
freezing
me.
in here.
Last thing I need is someone constantly telling me that. No,
Makes
Teletubbies.
sense. All right, so
Laissez-faire attitude from Elsa.
I'm much happier with the idea of your nursery being run by two Teletubbies than I was about the Cookie Monster being in charge, so that's good.
Oh, wait. A minute? How are we back here? We're supposed to be at the Cornish Early Childhood Conference.
I know what he's done.
What?
He's brought us back for the advert.
How can... Michael is too powerful. You can't be teleporting people all over the place.
You're getting too strong, mate. It's not good enough.
It's too much. We're going to have words.
Anyway, now we're here. Let's placate him. Who is the sponsor this week?
Actually, this week's sponsor is Play.
What, really?
Kind of. We're sponsored by Family's early childhood platform, which gives time back to the educators so they have more time to play. So, sponsored by Play.
Okay.
Well, think about it. So, all of the things that educators would be spending time on, like checking ratios or being on the phone to parents, you can take care of it all in the app so they have more time to play.
But hold on a second. Educators, they get into the sector for the paperwork, right? It's, the joy of printing, the unbridled happiness that an Excel spreadsheet gives to them. Surely that's what really matters.
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so.
Do you think family's the answer?
I think so.
All right, well, I'll take your word for it. How do people find out if they, want to prove me wrong?
They can go to family.co/demo.
All right, then. Well, should we head back to Corn? Should
we... Well, let's make some work
I've got
for
an
him.
idea.
Go on.
Right, tell us a bit about Moving the Box.
So, Moving the Box is a project we've started through Hempsall's, which is specifically designed to look at the attainment gap. It's driven by the new target for changing the ELG or upping the GLG to 75%. But, spoiler alert, it's not actually about that. So the Moving the Box image, or the Moving Box title, comes from the image of, 3 people standing on the same side box. That's equality. And equity is you move the box over the tallest person to the shortest person so they can see over the fence. And that's where it comes from. So the idea of the project is that you identify children at the beginning of the year who won't get a GLD, or you think won't get a GLD, and you develop a specific set of strategies and support for that individual child to change that trajectory from not getting the GLD to getting the GLD. So that comes from research that we have. I mean, there's, the high scope research we could talk about, but there are also 2 particularly more recent pieces of research. One is Performing Against the Odds by EPI, which looked at children who came from background disadvantage, who statistically would have been unsuccessful, ended up being very successful, and they analysed the different things that flip that trajectory. Similarly, there's Craig's work on high-achieving white working-class boys, which followed the same sort of principle. These are children who had, massive disadvantage, but they ended up being successful academically, socially, and so on, and emotionally. So we do have this history in early years where we can change that trajectory, and that is part of the early years brief. Bizarrely and tragically, the gap is actually getting wider. And although the EYFS, and I think it's part of the success of the EYFS, the level of quality is generally rising, it's not rising for those children. That's why the gap's getting bigger.
Right.
So the idea of the Moving the Box is to say, well, what is it these children are missing? What is it that's preventing them getting an early learning goal? Sometimes that's specifically about the early learning goal. Mostly it's about the underpinnings of learning behaviours, things like self-regulation, cultural capital, number of interactions and so on. So the idea is to say that you target and focus on those children. Doesn't mean you ignore the other children, but research tells us that children who come in at a high level of development, with a high level of cultural capital from higher social economic status, do well almost regardless of the provision. Whereas children from lower social economic status are most sensitive to the quality of provision, quality of interaction, and the quality of the curriculum. So by focusing on them, you're literally moving that box. And the thing people find most uncomfortable is the permission, if you like, to say, actually, you are going to spend more time with those children. Yeah,
you're going to spend an unequal amount of time with the children.
A disproportionate amount of time. And, the research comes out, we've known this for years, that practitioners, and I'm sure I used to do this as an educator, you tend to interact most with children who are the most articulate, most confident, most with the highest cultural capital.
To some degree, the easiest children.
Exactly, which
with,
is,
right?
and it's kind of checking that cognitive bias and saying, actually, I'm not going to go in where it's all happening. I'm going to find my 3 children who need most support. And, children come in, as we all know, children come in with different experiences, different cultural capital, but also, I would say, critically, different perceptions of adults. And that's really critical. So some children you meet, and this happens to me all the time. I go into settings and children come up to me. They don't know who I am or why I'm there.
They're not like, oh my God, it's Jan
Dubiel in my setting.
I haven't read my book probably, and and they come on. They start telling you things. They start telling you things. Like, I've made a muddle today, and it's like. And their assumption is it's because their model of adults is all adults are there to help you. They all find you interesting. They all love you. If you say, I'm interested in birds, they'll take you to a museum, or they'll buy you some books of birds. Their perception of adults is this kind of very sort of glowy one. Other children's experience of adults is very different. So when they come into settings, they're wary of the adults. Yeah. And those are precisely the children you need to be with. So part of what we say in the project is it's the relentlessness of breaking down that kind of barrier. And it might be, I used to do this as a teacher. Sometimes you'd play alongside them. They don't want to talk to you. They're the children who don't want to talk to you, and they're the ones who most need you to. Okay. So you might do parallel play, you might do a narrative of your play, you might start narrating their play, and then you build up this conversation. So, and one of the other kind of drivers for that is when you look at the work of Ferrell-Lavers and levels of well-being. So if you've used POMS, a process-orientated monitoring system, first thing you do is you do a sort of scan of children's well-being. You assess them for low, medium or high well-being. And the thing is you focus, obviously, once you've done that, you focus on the children who've got low well-being. Yeah. The other ones, they're going to be fine. Yeah. These ones need the support in order to do that. And when Ferrell-Lavers is talking, he talks about some examples of that, which are incredibly powerful, of children who came with really low well-being. They relentlessly pursued what it was at the heart of it, and when they found it, it completely changed them. So the example I use is there was one boy who they show pictures of him, and he has he's very sad. His kind of shoulders are hunched. He's not interacting with other children. He doesn't really talk to adults. He doesn't smile. So they assessed him as having low levels of well-being. So when they were trying to find out what the matter, what was the cause of this, they spent ages having conversations with him, with his parents, and eventually they found out that he was adopted. But what had happened was he had heard his parents talking, and they had said they wanted to adopt a new child, but they weren't sure whether they could afford it. In his mind, that turned to the fact that he thought they were going to sell him so they could buy a new child. So they had that conversation with him. Then they show the photos of him afterwards, and it's like a completely different child. He's smiling, he's playing with others, he's chatting, he's showing things. That one conversation, that single conversation that reverted that misconception, changed his life without a doubt. And that's part of the driver for this. We get beneath the skin of those children. We get beneath the skin of their barriers to learning. And it might be cultural capital. It might be fear of adults. It might be they haven't had enough interaction with people. And you disproportionately interact with them, support them, follow their interests, ensure that they, get to talk about what they're doing. And it can make a difference. And that's what a lot of the research talks about. It's about making sure those children get the support they need and acknowledging some children need more teaching than others. And that's so. So that's the project in brief.
Amazing.
It's an interesting reflection on practice, isn't it?
I really
think
so.
I think, the Ofsted, again, that's made me popular, the Ofsted document, Strong Foundations, it was full of things which I think we knew, but they were big red flags, like you interact mostly with the most confident, articulate children.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
And because I remember when we first talked about this, and I sort of, it's not necessarily how I feel, but I know a challenge to this is that people talk about like raising the floor, or raising the ceiling, right? And it's like people worry sometimes that approach is going to lead to you like insufficiently challenging the most the most potentially gifted children and so on. But I thought it was a really interesting reflection that you made, which was you actually are already spending a disproportionate amount of your time with a set of children. It's just the wrong set of children, right? Like today it is imbalanced, as a standard. And I think that's quite a good way of, for me, thinking about how you shift to this mindset.
Absolutely.
Because it's not necessarily taking it from equal to, but you probably are already.
No, and it is about, again, I talked about this morning, it's about your allocation of time. You have limited time. You have 1,000 interactions a day, but you have limited time. You can only do so much. And it's about identifying what's the most important thing. So it's not inhibiting those children, because you'll still do your teaching, you'll still do your inputs, you'll still do kind of have that level of expectation of them. And what's really interesting about, because the work's kind of started and how we've talked about children, is it is about things like the number of interactions. It is about cultural capital. It is about language development. And the thing is, those are all things you can change. So when I started the project, I put a thing out on social media, which when the target was announced, and I said, what sort of things do you think we should do to close the gap? And people writing things like end child poverty, and I'm thinking, I'm busy this week. I can't. That's not within our gift, is it? But there are things we can do, and the research I cited is really strong in saying that. Actually, we can make significant changes. We can ameliorate the impact of disadvantage if we get it right for those children, but also acknowledging it's different for those children. They don't come in with that cultural capital, so they're often sometimes quite alienated from the environment and the practice. So we have, bizarrely and ironically, a one-size-fits-all model in early years, which is you do some input and then children self-select. Children, follow intellectual pursuit. Children, you make use of the resource areas. But that is a cognitive bias, because some children will come in and they'll skip over to the construction area and they'll build a tower, and you'll say, oh, what's that? And they'll say, oh, that's the Eiffel Tower. And I went there in France with my family, and then we went to a charcuterie, and we had right. Those children will always be okay. But those children bring all that into the setting with them. Other children will never have seen bricks before. They won't know what to do with them. Yeah. And sometimes, they'll pick them up and throw them. That's not because anything malicious. They haven't got that knowledge and that cultural capital to bring to it. Wow. But those are specifically and imperatively, those are things we can change. We can change children's cultural capital. We can change the number of interactions we have. We can change the number of back and forth conversations. We can change how their interests are built on and acknowledged and supported. So I'm really hopeful about the project. Yeah. So we've done day one, which was identifying the features of successful children and children who hadn't reached GLD, for example, and kind of unpack that. So the next day, which is about to take place over the next couple of weeks, people will bring their identified children and devise those strategies with them.
Interesting. Wonderful.
It's quite uplifting, I think, really.
Yeah. I think it's lovely. I think it's a lovely way of framing it, and I think it's I can imagine lots of people listening would be able to do that work of the observational work to work out who those children are, and then think about how they work with them.
It's just about doing good teaching, and it's about being brave enough to do what is right for those children, and not being guilty that you're disproportionately supporting those children. Yeah. That is the only way we will close the gap.
That's so wonderful. And I can't believe you're going to be really upset, but that's it.
I think you need to say something about these chairs.
I definitely do. I need to say thank you to a few people. Well, first of all,
should we wait for that noise to stop?
We probably should wait for that noise to stop.
It's outrageous.
I know it's time because I heard some noises downstairs, and next up is some cream cakes. Some scones and cream. So I can see some itchy feet in the room already.
Yeah, my voice has almost gone as well.
I can see people slavering.
They're slowly sneaking out.
So my first thanks is, of course, to the wonderful Jan. Thank you so much for being here. I actually want to thank Julia, who woke up without a voice this morning, which is not an ideal setup for a podcast.
Yeah, usually I'm clear as a bell. Listen to this.
However, she did smoke 50 cigarettes, clearly, on the way to
I've taken it up in the last 24 hours.
I want to thank the Cornish Early Childhood Conference. I didn't even mention that at the beginning. That was rubbish.
Oh, yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks, Mandy, who's just sitting over there and for inviting us for our very first live performance. And I have to say thank you to the Ministry of Outdoor Education, who gave us these tiny chairs at a moment's notice, which is very cool. They told me lots of things about them. They're made
stackable, washable.
They're stackable, washable. They're great.
Make your tea.
Go buy them, I guess.
Tuck you in at night, read your story.
Yeah, exactly, and all that stuff. So yeah, thank you very much, and thank you all for being here. And thank you very much, Jan.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.